Hi, my name's Everett Minshall. I'm an aspiring machine learning engineer, and in today's video, I want to show you how to use Python and pre-built machine learning models to automatically summarize articles of text. I also want to see how far we can push this. So I'm going to try to even summarize an entire 300-page ebook. Big shout out to Nicholas Renault. He's a big inspiration, and if you're interested in machine learning, go check out his channel. I did take some of his code to use as a launch point for my own purposes, so I've made modifications to it. I'll link in the description his original notebook. So let's jump into my computer. I'll show you the code and I'll walk you through it. Okay, first thing you want to do, open up your Jupyter notebook, and you're going to need to install pip install transformers. I've already installed this, so it's going to go relatively quickly. For you, it might take a little bit, but once you got that there, you need to import some other good old-fashioned packages. So from import pipeline, and I think we just need to import requests. Then we're gonna initiate a variable. And it should take care of the little error message there. Awesome. So what this line is doing is loading in the pipeline summarization. This is the pre-built machine learning model, BERT, and we've initialized it in this variable here. Next thing we want to do is have our text, a place to put our text, whatever we're going to summarize. We want to put it here and store it in a variable. This code here is basically saying we're going to take our text variable and we're going to replace all of the periods with this tag. And then we're going to split up the text wherever we see this tag, and it's going to store it in a list. And that list is called sentences. This max chunk is going to make more sense later. Our summarizer can only take a certain amount of characters. So we're saying that the maximum chunk of all the sentences is going to be 500. We're going to write a for loop to do that. I've already done it, and it's going to look like this. So let's run through it. The current chunk is equal to 0, and chunks is initialized by an empty list. So for each sentence and sentences, right? Remember, we've split up our text into sentences here. If the number of chunks is equal to the current chunk plus 1, right? So if this is true, we're gonna split up the number of sentences with a space that's less than or equal to the max chunk, which is 500. And then we're gonna extend our chunks of the current chunk with the sentence split here. Otherwise, the current chunk is added 1 plus 1, right? And it's appended with the sentence that's split by this here. And if these things are satisfied already, then we would just want to print the current chunk and append chunks with the sentence split of this space here. Whoops. It'll make more sense when I paste in a text here and then print it out. Basically, you're going to see that this EOS tag goes away and it's replaced by a space in this period. And we just join all the chunks together with this line here. And we then output the number of chunks that our text has been broken up into. So I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but in just its most basic form, we take a list of sentences and then group them together into a maximum chunk of 500. And then once we reach this limit, we create another chunk. So of our sentences, we're grouping them together and creating a list of chunks made up by our list of sentences. Our next piece of code is going to be this. It's results, summarizer, our variable chunks. Max length is the maximum length of characters within our summarization. Minimum length is 30. This is our actual, like, our summary coming together here, and it's stored in the results. And a good way to make sure that our results came out clean, meaning that it makes actual sense. It's not something wonky, which sometimes happens. It's good to check the first chunk in the list, basically, to make sure that it makes sense. So this is just a testing operation there. And we don't want it to just return a list of chunks. We want it to be joined together like a paragraph or several paragraphs. So we're going to join everything, the summary of the results in what's called a summary text. It's going to join in together with called text. So we're going to open the blog summary text and we're going to initialize it with write. And this will write a file in our folder called blog summary text. So let's go ahead and test this out. Why don't we go ahead to like Medium or something, and let's find 6 papers on data science everyone should read. Let's copy the entire thing. You can see this is quite a long article here. Maybe I don't want to read through it or even skim through it. You can just paste it in there. And let's go ahead and initialize it. Initialize it. Initialize it. Let's get our results. And just make sure. Oh. And here we go. So the first chunk does make sense. So let's join it all together. Right. Misspelling things here, and then let's go ahead and write it. Excellent. So it's saved to my folder. Let me go ahead and open it up to see what it looks like. In fact, let's just open up Google Docs. Just get a blank one here. And this is what it looks like. And wow, look at that. Funny enough, he's talking about BERT, which is an NLP model no one could ignore. Which is funny, we're using the BERT model to summarize this 6 papers every modern data scientist should read. That's really funny. It doesn't give you a list of each paper that you should read, but it does look like it talks about the different models that are in there. So BERT, StyleGAN, looks like AlphaGo 0. Yeah, so this is what it'll look like. And you can play with the parameters in results, max length of 120, min length 30, to increase or decrease the size here. At this point, I said to myself, this works well for articles and blogs, but what if I wanted to summarize a chapter in a book, or a PDF, or an entire ebook for that matter? Would it be possible? 2 problems. One, books are really long. So I didn't want to copy and paste the entire text of a book into the script every time I wanted to use it. So that made me think, well, I'll use like a scraping tool. However, the only scraping tool I'm used to is Beautiful Soup, and that's a web scraper, not a PDF scraper. But after a little bit of research, I realized that there are some PDF scrapers out there, and it gave me a little bit more hope. So I rallied and tried again, and this is what I came up with. So how can we do that? Well, after some research, I realized that we can install a library called PyPDF2. We can install it by doing that. I've already got it installed here, so I'm just gonna skip running this kernel here. And then once we've installed the PyPDF2, we do need to import PyPDF2 PDF file reader. And we will need to load in the PDF file into our notebook here. So we've initialized this raw file here, and we're calling JP Morgan's 2017 Machine Learning Investments ebook. Then we're going to open the raw file, and we're going to initialize the PDF with the PDF file reader open file. So at this stage, we still need to also get the number of pages. We do that by storing the getNum pages in this variable here. And then before we put it through our summarizer, we do need to actually extract the text from the PDF. So we can do that with a for loop here. And we've initialized an empty string. And for pages, in the range of number of pages, the page equals pdf.getPage pages, right? Text equals the text plus a space plus the page extract text. So it's going to run through every page and the number of pages of our ebook. And then the text is going to be the extracted text of the page, right? And it's going to go through that for each page. So once we get that, we have a text, and our text should be full of all the text of each page of our PDF. Hopefully that made sense. Now we have a text, so we should be able to just go ahead and use it like as if we had this variable here, and just plug it through here and split it with the tag and break it up into chunks, and we should be able to work, right? So let's go ahead and try it. And you can see by looking at the results, it doesn't look right. CNN will feature iReporter. So something went wrong, right? And in fact, before I was doing this, it went wrong every single time, and I could just not get it to work for the life of me. The summarizer can only take a certain amount of chunks, and the ebook is just way too big. I searched far and wide to figure out how to better break up the book into smaller pieces well into midnight. And while my family slept comfortably, I was up here toiling away, reading and writing new code and failing over and over again. But I gave it one last shot, and I came up with this. I should say before we continue, big shout out to this guy. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your name, but your videos, especially this long document summarization video, was extremely helpful. So big shout out to him. He's awesome. I've also imported this little package here called NLTK. It stands for Natural Language Token. And I think this extracts sentences from documents. So we extracted the text, and then this here just made it a little bit easier to extract the sentences from the text. And we created a for loop, basically generated a for loop here that took the number of tokenizers within the sentence here. It outputs a max number here. This for loop, I'm not gonna go into super high detail, especially because I don't quite understand the auto tokenizer here and the auto model here. But basically, I believe what these chunks do is break down by the token size instead of just the character size, so that each chunk that goes through the model can be fitted to the tokens. Why don't I go ahead and just run these here? This here, I believe, takes the number of tokenized chunks, right? And so after we've broken everything into chunks, this takes the number of tokens within each chunk, and I think it's tokenized by C. And you basically can see that there's a list of tokens here for each chunk, and they can't go over a certain amount, I believe, in order for the model to work. And we can make sure it works by going through these pieces of code here. So the inputs becomes another for loop called chunk and chunks. Again, I'm not exactly sure what this tokenizer does, unfortunately. I mean, I guess this is a good lesson in stretching oneself to better understand the tools of the trade. It's the only way to get better, I suppose. So I'm gonna learn a little bit more about this and then make up a follow-up video so I understand it better. What this is gonna do is print out each summary for each chunk. So let's go ahead and run it. This is going to take a little bit, but as you can see, this is the summary of the first chunk, summary of the second chunk, third chunk, and it will continue to go through each chunk. There are 237 of these. So is it fast? Not by any means, but it will eventually do it. And you can basically read a much shorter version of a 300-page ebook that you might find really interesting and get the gist of it by just reading through the text here. Is it the best code ever written? No. Does it work? Sometimes, yeah, it does. But look, at the end of the day, these two notebooks allow me to summarize really big pieces of text. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was a really fun experiment for me, and I'll link both of the notebooks down in the description. And yeah, consider subscribing if you enjoyed this. If you find any use to it, let me know. Until next time, be sure to learn, apply, and thrive. Peace.